look more brunette yet. Like I can't cover this red no matter how many times I dye my hair. I've dyed it like 4 times in the past 6 months with different blues and purples, and this is what I get. Like, I'm trying to match my natural hair color, which is this. It's like grown out to here. I'm just trying to be a brunette again. Anyway, today we're going to be doing a Letterboxd recap, and I'm going to share with you everything that I watched in the month of March. We had some amazing first watches in March. Obviously, we had a bunch of original horror being released in theaters, so I will link every individual horror movie review that I did down below because I did a bunch of them for all the new releases, so I'm not going to talk about them too much in this video, obviously. You can check out my reviews for those. But I do have some horror and non-horror movies that I really want to talk about in this video, and I'm so excited to talk about them. Sometimes I'm like, should I make a whole video for just that movie? Because I don't know if everyone watches these videos, and I really need y'all to know about some of these things that I watch. The first two I have individual movie reviews for. So we have Fresh and No Exit. I will link them down below and up here in the cards if you want my full in-depth thoughts on those two movies. And then I rewatched Stowaway. I was in the mood for a space movie. This one's on Netflix. It's easy, just pop on. I really like this movie. However, I'm not a huge fan of Anna Kendrick. I've said that before. I don't know if it's her acting. I'm not sure. There's something about her. I can't put my finger on it, but it has Toni Collette in it and I love her. Okay, let's talk about The Feast. Now, this is probably one of my favorite things that I watched in the month of March. In my top three for sure. So this is described as a horror fantasy and follows a wealthy family as they prepare for a fancy dinner with their guests. A mysterious young woman arrives whom they hire to be their waitress, and things begin to unravel. So this is actually a Welsh movie, and everything about this movie was so unique and so original. I haven't really seen anything like this. There are similar movies in terms of themes, but as far as execution goes, this one is so good. I loved the symbolism and the metaphors throughout. It is more on the artistic side as far as movies go, so a lot of longer shots. It's a little bit of a slower pace to really get going. But man, was this disturbing. This will leave you walking away and thinking, what did I just watch? I really, really enjoyed the artistic choices in this movie though, with the framing and all of the lighting, the score, the acting. The performances were so impressive for this movie because it really relies on their like face and emotions coming through on their face, because a lot of it, I mean, there's dialogue and everything, but I feel like so much of it comes through their emotions, if that makes sense. It's just literally a work of art, and the setting is probably my favorite thing. It's like this old, I mean, it's a new modern home, but it, I think, was renovated, and it used to be on this farm, and so it's in like a really rural area, but it's surrounded by a field and then a forest on the edge, and you get to go into the woods, and just the setting is gorgeous. It's like my favorite type of setting for like an artistic movie like this one. That being said, I will say this movie is not going to be for everyone because it does lean a little bit more artsy, and it doesn't get too artsy-fartsy for my liking. You guys know that's not my favorite type of horror movie, when it takes itself a little too seriously, but this one does it in the best way, and it was so entertaining, bizarre, which is one of the reasons why it's not for everyone. This one is a weird one. Like I said, you're gonna walk away and be like, what was that? It is streaming on Hulu right now, so definitely check it out if you haven't seen it yet. I think it came out in 2021, but I had only just discovered it now, so I don't know if it is a recent release or, you know, because with foreign movies, I don't know if that's the US date or the Welsh date or when it really came out or when it was put on Hulu, but definitely go watch it. Then I watched The Social Network for the first time. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was really good. I've been really into these kind of dramatized and scripted shows based in reality. Ryan and I have been watching The Dropout. If you are not watching The Dropout on Hulu right now, you need to. It has Amanda Seyfried playing Elizabeth Holmes with the whole Theranos scandal. Oh my gosh, such a good documentary series. I was gonna watch it alone, and then I just had it on one day, and Ryan was hooked instantly, and now he has to watch every single episode with me, and I'm not complaining. I love that show so much. I would have talked about it in this video a little bit more in depth if I had finished it, but they release episodes weekly and they're not done yet. I think there's one more week after this one. So let me know if you want me to talk more in depth about it in the end of April when I do a Letterboxd recap for April. But watch The Dropout. That's not even part of this video, but just go watch it. Then I went and saw The Batman. This was a highly popular movie, obviously highly anticipated movie. My God, I feel like we've been promised this movie for so many years and the marketing has been nonstop. But I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. A lot of people wanted me to review it. Don't know what I would say about it, to be honest. It's not a horror. It's darker in tone. I've seen people compare it to that of Zodiac and Seven, which are, you know, dark thriller movies. So it's similar in that sense, I guess, but it's just not one that I would review. I'm not into, you know, superhero movies, really. I love Joker and things. I really enjoy the Batman franchise because I feel like it's more cinematic and more like good movies for the general public versus Marvel, which are, you know, for superhero fans. Like, you have to be a Marvel fan to enjoy those movies, whereas I feel like anyone can really get something out of the Batman movies. But it just wasn't enough for me to review. I don't know what I would even talk about. I thought it was a little long. Definitely didn't need a lot of the middle stuff. Didn't really follow some of the story, not gonna lie. But visually stunning. Loved Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz in that movie. I thought they were great. And Paul Dano. Can we just talk about Paul Dano for a second? I love Paul Dano, and him as Riddler was genius. Like, so good. Anyway, let's move on. Then I watched Tethered. I did a whole individual movie review for that, again linked here and down below. Definitely go watch my thoughts on that. Now we're going to talk about something a little bit heavier that I watched, definitely the heaviest thing and the most difficult watch of the month, and that is Phoenix Rising, which is streaming on HBO Max. This is done by Evan Rachel Wood and kind of outlines her relationship with Brian Warner, aka Marilyn Manson. A lot of people have thoughts on this one. I'm a little bit nervous to talk about it because I know Emma from Spooky Astronauts got some backlash, or not backlash, but just like weird comments because she talked about this as well. Now, full transparency, I was a big Marilyn Manson fan back, well, I started in high school, and even semi-recently I did some Halloween looks on YouTube, like Halloween tutorials for 2 of his looks over the years, which have since been deleted, obviously, because I do not support him anymore. I feel disgusted, like I feel sick watching this documentary, ever being a fan. Like, it makes me very uncomfortable and very like appalled in myself and ashamed because I didn't know that that was what was happening, and obviously no one really did besides who was close to Evan. But I'm just so proud of Evan for releasing this documentary. I know how difficult it must have been to not only film, but to release publicly like this when she's received threats and everything from Marilyn Manson. It is a heavy watch. It was so hard to watch. I wish I had listened to the trigger warnings a little bit more because there are some in the beginning of, you know, some of the graphic content that it describes and entails. So definitely listen to that and, you know, protect yourself. I wish I had at certain points in the documentary because they were very difficult to watch and they sat with me for so long. Like, I'm still thinking about this documentary. So after that, I went and saw X, of course. X being probably my favorite thing that I watched in the month of March. I will link my full review for it if you want my full in-depth thoughts on that, but loved that movie so much. That was such a surprise, and I was so happy that I loved it that much and got so much out of it. I was really surprised, to be honest. It's not really my content. So the next movie I want to talk about, just for a second, it's not a horror movie. I watched The Fifth Element. Should I say rewatched? I don't know if you can hear that, my cat is drinking water. This movie is my childhood, and if I could redo my top 30 movies of all time, which I will link that video up here if you want to know my other 30 movies, I would definitely have included The Fifth Element because this movie is just perfection to me. It's nostalgic. I absolutely love the dystopian, the technology. Everything about this movie is perfect to me. I love it. It is in my top movies ever, but for some reason I had forgotten about it when I did my top 30 movies ever. So I feel very regretful of that because this movie is fantastic. I'm just generally obsessed with like dystopian worlds, and I do have a whole shelf now on my in my DVD collection of dystopian apocalyptic DVDs. It's just some of my favorite type of media and entertainment is dystopian / apocalyptic, especially if it's both, like it was an apocalypse, now it's dystopian. So good. Anyway, then I watched Amma. So again, full review up here. I do recommend it, but comes with some caveats. So definitely check out my review for that. And then I finally watched Dark Water, the American remake from 2005. It is streaming right now on HBO Max. I've talked about the Japanese original for so long, and every single time I bring it up, I'm like, I don't know if the American one is any good. So now I've seen it and I can tell you, it's pretty good. It wasn't as bad as I was expecting. I'm not sure why I thought it was going to be bad, because obviously I love The Ring, and I will talk about Ring-yu in a second, but I prefer The Ring, which is an American remake of a Japanese movie. So why did I think Dark Water was going to be bad? I don't know. So this is set in New York and follows a newly divorced mom and her daughter as they move into a new building where they discover dark water leaking from their bedroom ceiling. The building manager not doing anything, the mother decides to try to solve the issue herself. This is the same plot as the original, of course, and I really like that they kept a lot of the original story, and even some of the cinematography and the scenes were very, very similar to the original. So I like that they kept that mood and the themes and everything throughout the remake. I still prefer the original, I think, but the remake is actually very, very good, and I do highly recommend it. But do be warned, I say this every time I talk about Dark Water, it's less horror and more drama thriller. So again, dark thriller, definitely heavy on the drama as well, especially with the ending. So if you want something a little bit lighter on the horror side, I'm not gonna say lighter in general because the content's pretty heavy, but lighter horror, definitely give Dark Water a try. So it was a rainy day when I decided to watch Dark Water. Those are few and far between these days, very rare. Even though we're in spring, we're just getting very minimal rain, and I'm kind of missing that a little bit. So I took advantage and did a double feature. So after I watched Dark Water, I decided to rewatch Ring-yu. I've probably talked about this movie in the past, but I will be doing a full video on all of the Ring-yu or Ring movies, and then also the American remakes, as well as the book. I do own the book, so I'm gonna do a whole breakdown on this franchise from the book to the originals to the American remakes. I'm gonna do it all in one video, so hope you're excited for that, because I have to do a whole dedicated video to my favorite horror franchise of all time. Okay, so next up, I'm going to talk about a movie that I couldn't get through. I didn't finish it, and I know you're saying, why would you even talk about it? I'm just going to mention it. I'm not going to review it, but I just wanted to talk about it in case anyone was curious about my thoughts on it. And that is Windfall on Netflix. I was very excited about this movie. I saw about it on TikTok, and it has Jesse Plemons in it, who I really like, Jason Segel. So it looked up my alley, and I actually tried watching it with Ryan because it seemed like something he and I would both like. We both like Jesse Plemons. However, I'm questioning the projects he's taken on now because Antlers, not great. Windfall, not good. Well, I don't want to say not good because I didn't finish it, but I got over halfway through and nothing happened. I was so bored. I was so bored. You know how we talk about DNFing a book, like did not finish a book? We're allowed to stop it if we don't like it. Why don't we do that with movies more often? You're allowed to stop a movie if you don't like it. I know you probably know that already. Like, you know, most people know this. But I feel like we need to talk more about the movies that we just couldn't get through. These characters were insufferable. Their decisions didn't make any sense. I mean, he's supposed to be a billionaire, so I get that he's eccentric, but they didn't even try to stop the home invasion. Like, it was just weird. This is a bizarre movie, and I think they were going for something, you know, similar to like Lobster maybe, where it's just weird, but it was uncomfortable in a bad way, where I was just bored. It's for some people, it wasn't for me, so I skipped it. Take with that what you will. Okay, next we're going to talk about a new original horror that was released on Prime that I saw zero marketing for and no one else really talking about, and that is Master. I feel like I've been getting my wish lately of like wanting more original horror because we're getting so much of it lately. I mean, we always have it, don't get me wrong, but again, it gets overshadowed by all the mainstream stuff. But I'm very grateful for all this original horror we're getting this time of year. Also, funny enough, in my last video ranking or doing the tier list, or my last tier list video, I talked about school horror, how I wanted more school horror, and that wish was granted as well. So this follows 3 women who strive to find their place at an elite Northeastern university when anonymous racist attacks target a black freshman who insists that she's being haunted by ghosts. and each woman must determine where the real evil lies. Now, this is very similar to a Jordan Peele movie, so if you're generally a fan of his work, I think you'd really enjoy Master. It's very, very well done. It stars Regina Hall, who we know and love from the Scary Movie franchise, and I think she killed it. She was so good in this role. Now, this is described as a thriller drama, which I think is the perfect description for it. I still wanted to talk about it because obviously it has horror elements in it, but it is leaning more on the drama side, so the actual horror visuals and the scenes that we get are very rare, but I think a lot of the horror, just like Jordan Peele movies, stem from the big picture. Now, one of my favorite things about this movie are the nuances, the very subtle nuances within this. I think it really encapsulates and covers so many different things that Black women especially go through, and how they're treated and how their culture is treated, especially in the university setting and the education setting. Now, I of course will never understand what it's like to live through the Black experience, or, you know, deal with these microaggressions and the way that they're treated. Of course not, but I can recognize in this movie the very real world issues that they're presenting here and all of the layers within this. There's this scene that's very just well executed and showing the microaggression, is the white teacher, you know, performing the microaggression, and then another white teacher saying, all right, guys, we need to clear the table. We have African dance in a couple minutes. And it's like utilizing their culture while not approving of them as people, you know what I mean? So it's just the subtleties in there that are so well done. Chilling, honestly, is how I would describe this movie, especially with the ending. I just loved the way everything was done in this movie and the way that they executed everything and all the subtleties and all the layers of everything. Of course, we get the horror representation through some of the supernatural visuals, right? You have this ghost or this witch that is haunting these students, especially who stay in that room. But of course, like I mentioned, the horror is really the big picture of it. But like I said, a little bit more on the thriller side, less traditional horror scares. So, you know, like I said, Jordan Peele, if you're a fan, you'd probably enjoy it. But definitely check it out. No one else is talking about it, so please, please watch it. Next, I watched You Are Not My Mother, which is another new release. I'm not sure when it came out, but it did come out this year. It is an Irish movie, and you can rent or purchase it on Prime right now. I think it's gonna go into theaters. I'm not sure because it says early access on Prime. But anyways, let's get into it. So this Irish movie follows Shar, whose mother goes missing, and when she returns, Shar is determined to figure out where she went and what happened to her. Also, I want to mention, officially, this is a Halloween movie. So if you need more of those, this is a good one. Now, I will say this had an amazing atmosphere. I think the visuals were stunning in this. Again, a little bit more artistic on the artistic side, but the horror elements were actually so good. I loved the visuals of the horror elements in this. The way the running is when she's being chased, horrifying. The horror in this was so well executed, loved it. However, I will say the story itself and the movie felt a little bit familiar, like it's kind of been done before. Not exactly, but it's very similar. It kind of follows a similar horror formula as other supernatural movies like it. There's nothing super unique here, and the ending gets a little bit cheesy and a little cliche, which is very disappointing because of all the potential that it really had. I still recommend checking it out. It is a really good one. I would have done a whole individual review for it if I had the time probably, but I really, really loved it, so definitely go watch it. Okay, the last movie I quickly want to talk about because my battery's dying and I just, you know, this isn't a horror movie, so it doesn't matter. INGRID Goes West, which is a 2017 movie that is streaming on Hulu right now. This is a comedy drama, but I wanted to tell you about it because it's one of my favorite things that I ended up watching in the month of March, and it is described as kind of a dark comedy. So there are not horror elements, definitely not, but it's like, you know, a little bit more on the heavier side. It's not like a super comedy or anything like that. So this follows Ingrid, who moves out to California after her mom dies and she inherits her money. Ingrid tries desperately to befriend her latest Instagram obsession, an LA socialite. However, their facades begin to crack in both of their lives. This was such an interesting movie, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because it was so entertaining. Like, it had me hooked from the very beginning. I never once felt like it dragged on. It wasn't slow. I was just so curious where it was going to go because I knew things were going to escalate, obviously. That's why we're here. We're in it for a good time, for a good story. And so I was just so curious about what was going to happen next. I think it's great at highlighting the parasocial relationship that some people have with online content creators, except that Ingrid is, of course, a little bit more extreme. Obviously, there are those people, but, you know, obviously this is a very, very extreme case of a one-sided kind of parasocial relationship, at least for a while. But also highlighting the other side of like the negative aspects of being a content creator and kind of letting that get in your head, especially in LA. I just feel like a lot of people kind of lose themselves in it. So I liked the layers, if you will. Definitely isn't that deep of a movie, I think. I'm reading way into it as someone who is a content creator, but I really enjoyed it. I think that's one of the reasons why. Also, some of it takes place in Joshua Tree, and you already know I love Joshua Tree, so I think it's still safe to recommend this to majority of my audience because it is on the more dark comedy side versus like straight up comedy, you know, which is why I wanted to talk about it because it was just so fun. If you want like a fun, like light, it's not super lighthearted obviously, but like, you know, with some dark elements, just highly, highly entertaining, definitely watch this one. Okay, so there you have everything that I watched in the month of March. I think it was a pretty solid month, I'm not gonna lie. Not only with the amount of videos I did at a record 10, I don't know if I've ever posted that many videos in a single month. I think it was 11. No, it was 10 because I did a puzzle video over on my main channel. So I'm counting that one because that took a lot of work to do. If you are curious about my puzzling, my puzzle collection and everything, I'll link the video. And I had a trip and it was my birthday. So I went out of town, still managed to get everything done, still managed to watch all these movies. So I'm very proud of myself. If there's anything that you want me to watch in the month of April, can't believe we're in April, then please let me know and I will talk about it either in an individual movie review, if it's something kind of newer or an original horror, I will talk about it, or I could do it in a monthly recap like in this video. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I will talk to you soon. Bye.